It's 4 o'clock on a Thursday. You know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour. Woo! Thank you, fake audience. Let's fade the fake band. What a fade that was. That's as low as she goes. All right. Hello, everybody. And by everybody, I probably mean Dan Weber. Let me get the chat room open. He's always the first one in there. And there's Akira Canyon. Hello, Akira and Dan. How are you guys? Darren Fletcher. You guys are like the three musketeers, always on time. Much appreciated. Greg Carosa, Dale Markley, Darren Fletcher. I already said hello, Darren. Dean Turner. The usual cast of characters, and by characters, I mean characters. Hey, how are you, Marcus? Andre Sapanian. Awesome. Joseph Alonso. Good to see you guys. Martin Gravel, Jesse J. Peck. Hey, Jesse. How are you, buddy? So yesterday, after the show finished, I went outside, as I do pretty much every day after the show. I'm about 12 feet away from a pair of French doors, and I walked out in the backyard. Sure enough, the gopher trap had the little yellow thing sticking up. So I'm proud to report, I don't want to hear about it from the PETA people, but proud to report that the fifth gopher has been relocated. Slowly winning the war. I have a bunch of stuff I want to do today. There were some questions, a bunch of questions actually, that were unanswered, I believe, in yesterday's show. So I went back and went through the chat room and copied those down, hopefully not missing anything. Hello, Peter Rahill, Justin Mather, Christopher Jones, Bob Gunnerfelt. Late notification again. Wow. All right. Well, I'm going to let you early risers. Hey, Glenn, let you guys know. I think for tomorrow's show, we should listen to some music, right? Some of your music. So here's what I want you to do is sometime between now and like 10 a.m. West Coast time tomorrow morning, if you've got something that you would like us to listen to, and make sure it's your best stuff, send it to taxitv@taxi.com. I will repeat that, taxitv@taxi.com. Send an MP3. Only MP3s, just for the ease of moving them around and file size, all that stuff. Hey, John Pearson. And if you can, try really hard to send stuff that's not signed with a publisher and is not, mysteriously published by CD Baby or DistroKid or whatever that other one is. I know the chances of me getting everything not published and it would remain unpublished are slim to none, but it totally kills our chances of monetizing the show. And, I make about $100,000 on every one of these shows, and want to continue to do that. I think I make about $6 this show. And that's probably, if that. Anyway, yeah, tomorrow we're just going to listen to music. Does it have to be a taxi submission? It can be any song, as long as it's yours and you have the legal right to play it. As a matter of fact, when you send it to taxitv@taxi.com, please include in the subject line "Song for Friday Quarantini." And also include just a simple sentence that says, you have my permission to play this song in your show. There you go. Yeah, send the good stuff. Send the great stuff. I want to hear the great stuff. Okay. Let's see. What else do I want to tell you guys? Hey, Andrew Jordan. Monday, I have confirmed that the Highfields will, in fact, be on the regular episode of Taxi TV. We're going to test the bandwidth stuff tonight or tomorrow. We're going to try and do a split screen video remote with them. If not, I'll have them on the phone. But I'm very excited to have them. They're such incredibly nice people. More than anything, they're cool because they're so grateful for all the success that they've had. And they've worked super hard to get it, let me tell you. Excuse me. I am having iced coffee today. Oh, by the way, I didn't do this intentionally, but I know you guys are really in love with that piece of furniture back there. And the birds of paradise, which 2 of which or 3 of which are dead as a doornail. And the clock. Notice how all the colors match? Well, look at this. My shirt, my cup, the white t-shirt matches the face. I'm telling you, color coordination means so much to me. It's everything. Anyway, I didn't really notice this till I just put on the shirt 5 minutes ago. Didn't notice till I sat down. I just made this iced coffee about 5 minutes ago. It's got my daughter Gabriella's name on it written. You probably can't see it, but it says Gabs. That's her nickname. What else? I did do something by intent today. John Pearson and... Or no, not... What am I saying, John Pearson? Sorry, John. This is for Cass McKenty. Ta-da! My wife brought me back that shirt from Israel like 2 trips ago, and I love it because I'm really into goats, as is Cass McKenty. He actually owns goats. I just walk around the house going, bah, and I don't do it very well. That's right, goat, greatest of all time. Hey, I am Camwell. I saw your post in the comment area, and you said that you heard about Taxi through an article you found online from Spotify or something. Please explain. Pierre says, sell your lawnmower, buy a goat. Yeah, and don't bother buying any plants because the gophers will eat them. I am Camwell. I'm waiting for the answer, he says in his best James Earl Jones voice. Yeah, he did just join yesterday, and I saw that note. I think he said he was doing something, and Spotify turned him onto an article somewhere. I don't know what day the Jason Blue Melody show is going to be on. I haven't spoken to Jason since that day. I know that this entire week, he was doing like a boot camp type of thing or something. So he felt like he'd just be totally out of pocket. So I haven't even bothered speaking to him, but I will call him next week, and I'll let you guys know. Apparently there he is. Yeah, Spotify for Artists had an article on their app that had a list of the best companies to go through for music placements, and Taxi was one of them. If you could find a link to that and send it to taxitv@taxi.com, I'd really appreciate that, just because we post articles about Taxi on our website, and would love to have that. Anyway, I'm really glad that you saw it. Glad that you've joined. Glad that you're part of this crazy bunch of dudes and dudettes. Do we have any dudettes today? I have not seen a single female in the chat room yet. Who merged with Sound Better? Notori Moore, she's female. Thanks, Will. Spotify and Sound Better merged? Isn't Sound Better... Sound Better is the place where you go and hire people to do vocals and such? Gotcha. All right, so on with the big show. Question that I was going to ask you guys yesterday and I didn't get around to is, do you guys read magazines? I'm old, so I still do read magazines. I tend to read a lot of them in the executive library, if you catch my drift. But I'm curious to know if you guys read magazines, because we still advertise in Recording Magazine and Music Connection. There's a magazine in the UK. We don't advertise in Sound on Sound. We used to, but we don't right now. M Magazine, which is just one or two, not anymore. Guitar Player. Music Row's the only one I read. Fly fishing ones, there you go. Darren Moss only reads magazines when I fly in airplanes, even then, less and less. Pierre reads Recording Magazine and Jazz Times. Darren Fletcher reads them just for the articles. American Songwriter. Justin reads Recording Magazine, but online. Yeah, we still advertise in several magazines. We actually do track where our potential new members come from. And even though people rarely report that they read the magazines when they, sign up for taxis, emails, online, or whatever, we still find that we're breaking even. So, if I drop $1,500 on an ad, I make $1,500 back. But yeah, we've been long contemplating that decision. Although I've got to say, I have an incredible loyalty to Recording Magazine, and here's why. Do you know that when I started Taxi in 1992, I think I started it with either 60 or 70,000. I think the initial funding was $60,000, and that goes very, very quickly. The first thing I did was buy advertising in like Recording Magazine, Musician Magazine, I don't know, one or two other magazines, and each of those like at least $1,000 a month, if not more. And the guys at Recording Magazine, at one point, I had racked up a bill with them of $18,000 that I owed them on nothing more than a handshake. And I said to them one day, their office happened to be like 5 minutes away from where I started Taxi. And I drove over to Recording Magazine and met with Tom Hawley, who is still the publisher to this day. And one other person, can't remember who it was. Anyway, I met with them and I said, here's the deal, guys. I feel terrible that I haven't been able to pay you for the last many months. I really appreciate you letting me rack up this bill. I promise you that even if my company goes under, I will pay every penny of that $18,000 back. It may take me the rest of my life, but you will get your money. And because of that, I've never, ever pulled out of Recording Magazine. I've pulled in and out of other magazines, but not that one, because those guys did me a solid, and I've always really appreciated that. Anyway, okay, on to the questions that were hangovers from yesterday's show. Darren Moss asked, do you have any stories about John Brahaney's involvement in Taxi's early days? He was very cool. I think we talked about this on a previous episode, but I will retell this story, which, I think I've told every story 100 times on Taxi TV at this point. Anyway, I had the idea for Taxi, I think in November-ish of 1991. I wrote the business plan in 48 hours. I started calling people and asking questions, and what do you think of this idea, and how much would you pay for a service like that? And all of a sudden somebody, like 3 people actually, one day all said, you should talk to John Brahaney and Len Chandler from the LA Songwriters Showcase, commonly known as LAS. And they were a very well-respected LA-based songwriters organization that I think on a monthly basis had meetings at like the Women's Club of LA, and they had a thing called a pitch-a-thon, and they had like a Wheel of Fortune. They would actually rubber band cassettes. That's where the idea for the famous Taxi Burrito, back when we still did cassettes, and the burritos basically looked like this. You would wrap your lyric sheet and your submission form around the cassette and then rubber band it. And we would tell everybody, make sure that the typing is on the outside, because we used to have barcodes, individualized barcodes for every member. And that way when their submission came in, we could just swipe the barcode and it would pull up their account, and we would just type in the song title into the computer. I would say that 99% of the people that did that did it wrong. 99%, maybe 100%. Anyway, I got the idea for that from John Brahaney and the LA Songwriters Showcase, because they used to essentially make burritos. I named it a burrito, okay? But they would rubber band those to the wooden pegs on the Wheel of Fortune, and it was big, and they would spin that thing, and wherever it landed, I'm watching the chat. Sorry, I didn't tell my kissing story on Taxi TV, only at the road rally. All right, remind me. Maybe I'll tell. I think I've told this. Anyway, so that's how they would pick the songs they would listen to, and they would bring in an A&R person or a publisher or maybe a music supervisor, and they would do live critiques like once a month. So John Brahaney and his partner Len Chandler were kind of legendary among songwriters in Los Angeles. Even some big songwriters that weren't big when they joined LASS, like Diane Warren, for instance. John Brahaney met her when she started coming to meetings at 12 years old, and he told her she wasn't ready yet, and she told him to go take a flying you-know-what when she was like a kid. And Diane is still like that to this day. The woman loves the F word. She's pretty damn funny, and boy, is she talented. Anyway, her dad used to drive her to the LASS meetings, and Brahaney loved retelling that story. Anyway, so I got a phone number for John Brahaney, and I called him up, and I said, "Hi, my name's Michael Laskow." I said, "Is this Len Brahaney?" And he goes, "It's John Brahaney. Len Chandler is my partner." I'm sure I've told you this story. Anyway, he was a little bit, let's say, leery. He sounded leery, because he's heard about every scam, under the sun, every song shark, everybody who wanted to separate musicians from their hard-earned money. And he thought I was just another one of those guys. And he said, "What do you want from me?" And I said, "Would you meet me for a lunch? I'll pay you, whatever your consulting fee is per hour. To meet me for a lunch." So I think we met at like Jerry's Deli in Woodland Hills or something, and spent like 3 hours in a corner booth, and he kept trying to shoot down every idea that I put forth to him. Excuse me. And he couldn't. I felt like I had good answers to everything. And at the end of that lunch, he said, "Okay, well, again, I ask you, what do you want from me?" And I said, "Would you consult for me and help me, take off the rough edges and find the fine points of this business idea that I'm developing?" And he said, "Sure." So we went back to my apartment. I had a one-bedroom apartment about a half a mile away from there, and we went back there and we spent the afternoon brainstorming, had him look through my entire business plan. Eventually, I hired him as one of our very first screeners. The first group of screeners actually had Skunk Baxter from Steely Dan and the Doobie Brothers, a woman named Denise Oso, who was a songwriter-publisher, if memory serves correctly, a woman named Barbara Vanderlyn, who is still a big-time publisher, been around the industry forever. Let's see, who else? A guy named Doug Minnick, who ended up becoming our vice president for 10 years. John Brahaney, I don't know. There were, I want to say, 6 or 7 of them initially. Anyway, so Brahaney became my godfather, if you will. He was the person that I could always get the right answer for anything from, because he'd been through almost everything that I was experiencing or would experience in the future. because of LA Songwriters Showcase. As a matter of fact, they used to do a convention. I forget now what it was called, but I think they did 25 years of their convention. And I was a sponsor. Actually, that's how I met Matt Hurt, was at the LA Songwriters Showcase convention. What the heck was that thing called? Somebody will remember that in the chat room. Dan Weber has seen Skunk Baxter and the Doobie Brothers at least 3 times. What did they call? Anyway, I guess it doesn't matter what they called it. But anyway, John Brahaney, his lovely wife Joanne, Len Chandler, and a bunch of volunteers would put that thing on. In some regards, it was amazing. In other regards, I learned a valuable lesson from them, which is you can't have volunteers like working registration and important things like that because they don't know the answer to stuff. They're well-meaning, kind-hearted, helpful people, but when somebody says, "What about this?" they go, "I don't know. Let me ask John. Let me ask Joanne." So that's why we've never had volunteers sitting behind registration at the road rally. But we do appreciate our volunteers because they help unload the truck and set up the stage and all that kind of stuff. Matter of fact, John Pearson is one of our stage setter-uppers. Anyway, okay, so there's that. That's the John. So JB wrote the first 3 or 4 iterations of the Taxi Critique Forum. He taught me how to critique, many hours of going over my critiques and saying, you could do this better, you should have answered like that, you're being too kind-hearted, get to the point sooner, don't write so much. So all these things became part of just the soul of Taxi over the years. And JB remained a screener right up until his passing, which was, I want to say, like 5 years ago now, maybe more. And for those of you who are in the ballroom, I interviewed him probably a month before he passed away, maybe even a week before. Diane Warren was our honoree that year, and she was so sick. So she showed up and just went, "Thank you," when I presented her Lifetime Achievement Award. And a good friend of hers, who was one of our screeners, actually read a thank you, note from her on stage. And then I had time to fill. So the night before, when all this stuff was falling apart, I called John Brahaney and he said, and I already knew that he, had terminal cancer and had a very short time left to live. And so I called him and said, "Can I interview you live over Skype?" And I did, in the Grand Ballroom, with him up on a 9 foot by 12 foot screen. I think he was in bed, and I was just like, I would turn my head away from the audience. It was just choking back tears. It was so hard to see that. What is Diane's secret to success? Depends who you ask, but I can tell you, I don't think I've ever met anybody that determined in my life. Clearly talented, but she honed her craft. She might tell you she popped out of her mommy's womb that talented, but I think she had some talent and an incredible drive to become a hit songwriter. She is obsessed, beyond obsessed. If there's a word that's greater than obsessed, that's Diane Warren. Okay, so that's it for John Brahaney. I don't know what else to tell you other than, I would see him 5 days a week for many, many years. I could call him at home late at night and say, "JB, I got an email from a Taxi member who's really pissed off. What's your take on this?" Just whatever I needed from him, he was always there for me. All right, next one. Andrei Stepanian. How and where was Taxi advertised before in the 90s? It took me 25 years to hear about it by luck. Recording the magazines I mentioned earlier, it was all print ads, because you got to remember, when I started Taxi, I started it as an online-only company. You could only get it if you were a member of AOL, and I thought I was so cutting edge. And in fact, I was too cutting edge, because AOL only had 100,000 subscribers. So disseminating listings online to people in the form of emails was not working out well. So we had to eventually change it and make it so that we were sending them out by mail. there was no such thing as Google or Google AdWords or, any of the social media, none of that stuff. So basically we would acquire names and street addresses when people would call our 800 number from the ads, and then we would add them to a mailing list, and once or twice a month we would send out mailers. Oh man, I should have brought down, I've got a picture of my wife when she was like, I don't know, 32 years old, sitting there cross-legged at a coffee table. We would literally sit there and take these things and one by one fold them up, staple them, crease them, put a stamp on them, and write the address, the person's name and address, by hand on every one of thousands of them and send them out. There wasn't a reliable program for printing mailing labels back then. Now, of course, you print them on a grid and peel them off, but that didn't exist for the first year of Taxi. We eventually moved up to a machine where you'd put a roll of stamps in. The thing was like the size of 2 or 3 cigarette packs, and you would push down on it, go clunk, clunk, and leave a stamp on the thing, clunk, clunk, and about every third stamp would jam up, and you'd have to open it up and pull the stamp apart, try and salvage it and stick it on a thing. Man, it's amazing. I've got to say, if I can pat myself and my wife on the back, it is friggin' amazing that we didn't just go, this is too damn hard, let's call it a day. But here we are, 28 years later. Okay, Zuma Show said, I am a male with... Zuma Show here today? Zuma Show asked, I'm a male with demos for females. If the listing says female vocals for multi-award-winning composer or superstar, can I not submit it? Prince sang demos for females. He was Prince. Bottom line is you can do what you want. It's just if you're trying to get a female artist to fall in love with the song you're pitching, don't put up any speed bumps or roadblocks. And the way to do that is make it as easy as possible for the person on the end user end, the potential customer, if you will, to imagine him or herself singing it. If you have a good idea who it's going to, right key, right gender. That's what I would do. That's what most industry professionals recommend. Once you have attained a certain amount of notoriety as a hit songwriter, you could probably have one of Cass's goats sing the lead vocal. You know what? Actually, I'm sure Diane Warren still has great demo singers singing her demos. Whether or not she sticks to the gender rule, hey, Zuma, you are here. So yeah, but bottom line is, there's my answer for you. Yes, you should. I don't know that a screener is going to kick it out and go, dude, what are you thinking? This has a male vocal on it. It said female vocalist or female superstar. They could. My guess is that they might not. If you send in an amazing song that had the wrong gender vocal on it, they might give you feedback like, this song is amazing. You would be doing yourself a service by having the right gender of vocalist on it. So there you go. Okay. Cass says his goats break down when it comes to harmonies. Jesse J. Peck says Ralph Murphy had the info on that. You know what? I am actually sitting at Ralph's seat at our kitchen table. Every single time Ralph came here for dinner, normally I would sit over there and my wife would sit in this chair. But when Ralph came to our house for dinner, somehow he always ended up in my wife Deborah's seat at the table. So, Ralph, I'm feeling you, buddy. Okay, Brad Gray had a side question, thinking out loud. When the screeners review our submissions, is it possible for them to give us a quantifiable score, say, out of 10 on how we did? I think I addressed this yesterday. We used to have a little, measuring stick, a scale from 1 to 10, or 1 to 5, I can't remember now. We had that for many, many years, up until probably a year ago. But that little scale caused us a lot of problems over the years, because a screener, and we had it for, overall vocal quality, production, lyric, and melody, I think were the categories. And some of the screeners would give somebody, like a 9.5 on production, an 8 on vocal, maybe a 6 on songwriting, and a 7.2 on overall. And members would get really upset and go, how come this didn't get forward? It had an 8 and a 9. Well, it even said right on the form, this is just a relative thing. And we never, ever, ever judged what got forwarded or didn't get forwarded by those numbers. I mean, frankly, the only time that the staff would look at those numbers, other than the person screening the music, was if we had a complaint about a listing, or we check all the critiques that go out. And we want to see, quality control. So if somebody is checking off like all 9s or 10s on the little bar graphy thing, or in the little scale, but they're telling the member, you're not there yet, there was an inconsistency. And that was very upsetting to the members. And frankly, we just didn't see a lot of relevance. I can understand your point. You want to know how close. Somebody said, Brad went on to say, I do like the qualitative reviews, but if it was possible to understand how close or how far, that would be nice. See, that's the problem. When you look at a number and you go, I got like an 8 out of 10, that doesn't really mean that you're 20% of the way there. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, felt like an 8. So it wasn't really accurate, and it really pissed people off. So there you go. So that's why we don't do it. Betty Anderson. Hey, Betty, how are you? Deb just mentioned you on the phone to me last night. Those higher numbers were good for my ego. Really, I mean, that is the purpose that they kind of served, but they also went the other way. If somebody got a 6 on vocals, then they would call us up or send an email and say, well, everything else was an 8 or a 9. If the vocal was a 6, why didn't you tell me that? And I would get it resung and resubmitted. Well, first of all, there is that little issue of timeline. We're right in the middle of doing it, and can't you just see people, I couldn't get the vocalist I wanted, so can I get an extension on the deadline? No, you can't. There are just too many problems, so we just did away with it. So weird. I hear ice cream truck music. That is so weird. I hope it's ice cream truck. Either that or I'm hallucinating. Anyway, okay, so that was that. RapTalk.net said, I've been producing music for songs for a long time. I'd like to transition to instrumental cues. Is there something I can go through to learn? Yes. I need to go grab something. I will be right back. Oh. Two of the props I wanted to use are sitting underneath my monitors to keep them from rattling on the kitchen table. Okay. I promise you, Mr. RapTalk.net, if you buy and read these 3 books, you will know pretty much everything you need to know. Number 1, Demystifying the Genre by Dean Krippain. That is, once again, Demystifying the Genre by Mr. Dean Krippain. Boy, I look like I spent way too much time at the tanning salon right now. The next book is Demystifying the Cue by, once again, Mr. Dean Krippain. Demystifying the Cue. Look, there's Dino. Looks like he's spent a little time at the old tanning salon as well. And this one, damn. It's so hard doing everything in reverse. I can't even do it when I'm facing forwards. Writing production music for TV by Steve Barden. I would be willing to bet that most of the people watching the show today already have this book. There's Dean. He's in the chat room. Okay, seriously, you can't live without these books, especially if you want to do primarily instrumental cues for TV shows, and I would imagine most of those will land in reality TV. These books are indispensable. Also, go look at all the taxi videos on YouTube, because we've covered this topic many, many times. I've actually covered the topic using both of their books. I've played both music from both of them. And now, let's do a side-by-side comparison of these two dudes. Look at that. You got Steve Barden looking all serious. He's such a badass wearing those dark glasses. And then there's Dean. He's like all smiley. So, which musician pose are you going to strike? It is funny. I've got musician friends that, well, there I am. I've got musician friends that whenever they pose for anything, they're all like, I can't do it. They try and look so serious. Barry Gibb, close enough. Oh, I love Barry Gibb. One of the nicest guys I've ever met in the music industry. Okay, so that's that. Justin Mather asked yesterday, how does the screener schedule work? Do they work whenever they can in between other jobs? It's all over the place. And up until that stupid law, which is called AB5, went into effect January 1st of 2020, they were in fact all independent contractors. Arif Martin, the other nicest guy in the music industry, I knew both of those guys pretty darn well back in the day. Anyway, yes, the screeners, I think every single one of them has other jobs. They either maybe work at a production music library, they've been a vice president of, we've had people that have been like VP of Sony ATV, music publishing, people who were like senior vice presidents of Universal. Sometimes people lose jobs, and after about 30 to 90 days, their spouses want them out of the house, and they call me up and go, hey, I've heard that I can come there and screen. And funny enough, we find that the bigger the job, the more lofty the title, kind of the less good they were as a screener, interestingly enough. In my perfect world, I would have people like Dane Crepane and Steve Barden being our screeners, but they're taxi members, so we can't very well have taxi members screening taxi members, especially when they're friends with people. The optics would just look bad. Not that I think that those guys aren't super ethical people, which I know them to be, but it just looks bad for people that may not know them personally. But we have had many well-qualified taxi members ask if they could be screeners. So, yes, screeners. Now, Brooke hasn't been at Black Toast for many years. Many years. The screeners, I'm trying to think other jobs. Like, we've got one screener right now who's great at music library stuff. He was Frankie Valli's drummer for years. He's a teacher. He teaches drums. I forget what else he does, but virtually all of them we've got Prescott Niles, the bass player from the Knack. He still gigs with, I can't remember her name now. Anyway, I think it's safe to say every one of them has several other gigs. And so as of January 1st, we had to hire them on as part-time staff. And I think we onboarded like 35 screeners as part-time staff members. And now they've made an amendment to that law, which hasn't officially rolled out yet, that looks like we may be able to offboard them and turn them back into independent contractors. It was crazy. It wasn't just taxi that had to hire them, but the law stated that, like, if I'm going to play the Hotel Cafe as an artist, it's primarily a music venue that also serves food. So by that definition, the venue would have to hire me, the performing artist who plays 3 shows a year there. I don't really, but if I played 3 or 4 shows a year, which I think is probably the average for people that kind of cycle through there, you have to become a part-time employee of the hotel cafe. And then if you bring in a bass player to back you up, you have to hire the bass player. You, the artist, has to hire. It was just crazy. Anyway, there you go. Zuma Show says, Prescott Mel is legend in my book. Well, there you go. You've probably had stuff screened. If you're a Taxi member, you will have stuff undoubtedly screened by Prescott at some point. He's still a very active screener at Taxi. And if you come to the Road Rally, he is a one-to-one mentor, so you can sit down and spend 15 minutes with him. Yes, Prescott has been with us for quite a while, probably 15 or more years, if I had to guesstimate. Maybe longer. Okay, so how it works is every day the guys in the A&R department look and see what are the upcoming listings. They look at the deadlines to see which genres are upcoming and which people then would be the right people to assign to those listings based on their areas of expertise. Then they reach out actually at the end of the previous week and say, looks like we may have some work for you next week. Please raise your hand. And there's a thing they fill out online that says, yes, I'm available next week. And then they decide, okay, based on the quantity of submissions and based on the speed at which the screener typically works at, and first, second, and third choice for screeners, meaning most available, somewhat available, and would be good on this, but probably not available. They assign people to those things, and that's how the screeners get the jobs or get that work that week. And they can say, the screener gets to decide. We break the day up into 2 parts, a morning shift and an afternoon shift. The screener can determine which day and which shift, unless something's a super tight deadline and we call them or email them and say, we have an emergency or a really tight timeline on this. Can you come in tomorrow morning? So in that case, they couldn't say, I could do it Thursday. We might just move on to somebody who actually is available when we need them. So that's pretty much how it goes. Now, can they show up late for a shift? Yes. Can they leave early for a shift? Yes. Do we tell them how to do their job? No, we don't. We rely on their expertise. The only time we might tell them, give them feedback on how to do their job is if we feel that they're sugarcoating it too much or being too harsh. So basically, we don't talk to them about their quantitative analysis of the music. We talk to them about their tone, because Taxi has a tone, and it's an honest, forthright tone and a helpful tone, and they need to maintain that. So that's pretty much the drill on the screeners. RapTalk.net asked yesterday, does being forwarded mean you're getting placed? No. Let me underscore that. No. Getting forwarded, which is a term I actually invented when I needed, back in those days when John Brahaney and I would hang out and brainstorm ideas, I came up with the idea of forward and return, because I didn't want to say rejected, because nobody wants to hear they got rejected. And getting returned means, okay, it was sent back for, more work. Doesn't mean it sucked. It just means it wasn't right or it needed more work. Getting forwarded, pretty obvious. Your music is getting sent to the person who requests it. We're forwarding it on to them. So all that means is that the person who requested the music, your music is going there. Now you should understand, let's think of a hypothetical. Let's say a music supervisor working on an indie film is looking for love songs. That person runs a listing with Taxi. The screeners do their thing, and the music that makes it through the screeners ultimately gets forwarded to that music supervisor working on that independent film. Now, good to know. And by the way, that music supervisor has no obligation whatsoever to use that music. Can't force somebody, hey man, we did this work for you. Our members submitted it with all their heart and good intent, and you've got to use it now. Of course, that's not going to fly. It'd be just silly. So the music supervisor probably reached out to 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 publishers looking for music. They generally don't reach out to just one source. Although we have found out several times, many times in our history, when people have started a new production music library and they get referred to us, and we go through our screening process to make sure that we really, really tightly screen startups to make sure that there's a ton of legitimacy there. Because we don't want to forward a bunch of our members' music to a company that's never going to launch or is going to go down the tubes very quickly. So let's say that somebody, a typical example or scenario would be somebody that was vice president of another music library for 10 years, and they had an argument with their boss, and now they've gone off on their own. They're starting their own company. We know that person's an industry pro. We know that they're not a jackass. They know what they're doing. So we will, in fact, take them on as a client. Now, that person may be based on the fact that they've had a previous relationship with Taxi, or we come so highly recommended to them that they might use Taxi as the primary resource for finding music. That happens. Crucial Music, I think probably, I want to say the first 3,000 or 5,000 pieces of music in their library largely came from Taxi. They reached out to me before it was a company and said, we're starting this company. Can you guys find us this many high quality pieces in X amount of time? And they would run a crazy amount of listings. It was almost embarrassing how many listings they were running. It looked like we were only running listings for them, frankly. So that happens. And otherwise, it's very common when somebody reaches out to Taxi that they have reached out elsewhere. So now you've got music from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 different sources, all going to that person on the end user end, be it a music supervisor, a music library owner, could be producer working on a record for a major label artist. They go through that stuff and they pick something, or they pick nothing at all. They may get 37 things from Taxi, 12 from somebody else, 19 from elsewhere, blah, blah, blah. They listen to all that stuff and go, it was all good. But they're not looking for good. They're not even looking for great. They're looking for good and or great and right in the scene when it's a music supervisor. Or when it's somebody, pitching songs to an artist, let's say, I don't know, Faith Hill. You could have the greatest country song in the world, but if it talks about I went to the beach in my Daisy Dukes and got drunk with my boyfriend and, had a little fun time in the back of his pickup truck, Faith Hill ain't going to sing that. Doesn't matter how good the song is. So it could be a great song. It's just not right for that artist. It might be perfect for another artist. So there you go. Hope that answers the question. Raptalk.net says, thanks for your answers. I'll probably sign up for Taxi again. Any returning member discounts? If you're still on our email list, every time we do one of those sales, you should be getting it. If not, just go to the Taxi website, taxi.com, click the red button on the front of the homepage in the lower left quadrant, and you'll get on our email list and you will find out about those discounts. Jan Weilage asked, have the submissions become more polished over the years? So now the bar is higher. The bar has always been the same. Oh, I typed this in. Okay. So, yes. Oh, everybody who has been to many road rallies, any of our industry friends that use us, everybody to the person would tell you the quality of the music that comes from our members over the years has just gotten better and better and better. It's because they come to the road rally. It's because they hang out in the forum. They learn from each other. It's because they watch Taxi TV. It's because they incorporate what the screeners tell them. All those things culminate in you get better. The whole group of you have gotten better over the years. That has not changed the bar. The bar is not relative. The bar is not competitive. The bar is the same, exactly the same as the bar was on day number one when I started this company. And the bar is does it meet what the listing asked for stylistically, emotionally, texturally, vibely? Does it meet that bar, and does it meet the quality bar? It's just that simple. Is it great quality, and is it on target? If it meets those criteria, it gets forwarded. There are times that we hear songs that are amazing, and we sit there scratching our heads going, why did this person send it in? Yes, it's amazing. Does it have anything to do with what this listing asked for? Not even the slightest. So, wouldn't get forwarded, even though it's the greatest song. We could have something that was so on target stylistically for the listing, but was not very good in other respects. Maybe the vocal was just really lackluster. Maybe the drums sounded like sneakers in a clothes dryer. Maybe the bass part was almost non-existent in the mix. Maybe the lyric was a meandering lyric that sounded like stream of consciousness and made no sense whatsoever. There you go. So the bar, Jan Wyledge, is the same as it's always been. Alex Dillon asked, do they do customs on instrumentals? Yes. Andre Stepanian asked yesterday, is the custom critique allowed before a submission or after? It has nothing to do with the regular listings or submitting to them. You could send a custom, a request for a custom critique today for something that you may not submit for 6 months, or maybe it's a listing with a deadline 3 weeks from now, and you're eyeballing it and you'd like to get a little feedback. The chances of us getting that feedback back to you on a custom before that 3-week deadline hits, not that great, honestly. So you could potentially use it like that, but I wouldn't recommend it. So, and the last one, which I thought I covered in a previous episode, what's the difference? I know I've covered it in many previous episodes, but I thought I covered it recently. What's the difference between a cue and an instrumental? Dino and I just talked about this when he was on the show days ago. An instrumental is basically more like a song, but without a lyric. Unfortunately, though, when you take the lyric melody out of a song, it ends up sounding like a rhythm track. So then you have to put some sort of melody back in there, but if you do a full melody hitting every note that the vocal would have done with an acoustic guitar or a Fender Rhodes or a flute or whatever, it's going to end up sounding like a Muzak track. So basically, take the rhythm track of your song, pull the vocal out, and put some of the melody back in to give it some sense of melody and some forward movement, and you will then have an instrumental. A cue is shorter and is constructed differently. A cue is generally like maybe as short as 60 seconds, but typically more like 90 seconds to 2 minutes rather than a song being like 2 to 4 minutes. And a cue basically jumps right into an A section and probably goes to a B section somewhere around the middle. So it jumps in right into the A section, but maybe like instrumentation light for a couple of bars, a few bars, then it builds up, then drops back down to a stripped down thing for like 8 bars, then it builds up, keeps moving forward, boom, big finish, you're out of there. So it's constructed differently than a song, which is, a 30-second intro and a verse and a pre-chorus and a chorus and a bridge, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully that answers the question. We've got 6 minutes, so hit me with some more. Can't believe I got through all those. No, it's not cheating if you get a custom critique before you submit. I want you to do that kind of cheating. A good example of when an instrumental might be handy, solo piano, like cocktail jazz stuff. You could do that as a cue, but you might as well do it as a song, because many of the uses of that type of thing tend to be in scenes where there's a long piece of dialogue, people having a conversation in a restaurant, and there's cocktail jazz playing in the background. They're not going to switch from cue to cue to cue during that one conversation. They'll switch to a different piece of music when they get up and leave the restaurant. But during, let's say that they stay on the two people having that conversation for 3 minutes, which is not an inordinately long amount of time, for a serious conversation, I would say, although viewers might get a little bored. But you want that piece of cocktail jazz playing all the way through. So that's an example of when an instrumental, which, it's a song, could be an instrumental version of Fly Me to the Moon. There you go. Ronald Schultz wants to know, is the road rally still going to happen this year? Missed it the last 2 years, really want to come this year. That's everybody saying, I missed it last year, I want to come this year. We have been staying in constant touch with the hotel. Our goofy mayor has banned gatherings over 10 people until 2021. I do not believe that's going to stick. I think that was part of the, pandemic panic, as I call it. And I think that he will reassess as, thank God the numbers of people dying, the number of people getting sick are dropping off, and they will probably start to drop off more rapidly because you guys know I'm not a doctor, but I play one on Taxi TV, right? I think as things progress, as I say, inch back to normal, I think that they will reassess that. Here's the thing. Linda Starr says, it's California, believe it. Yeah, it's a crazy state that way. Anyway, the problem is, if they tell me in September, okay, you're good to go on the road rally, I'm not good to go on the road rally because I can't fire it up. It takes me, I start every year May 15th with my planning. Then I start really in earnest, serious earnest around July 15th. And then by, August 15th, man, I am in full bore working, 7 days a week, ridiculous hours. I can't do that if they tell me, because I'll start casually reaching out to people to formulate what I want to have, who I want to have on my panels. I'll start reaching out to people early in the summer and say, hey, by the way, I'm thinking about putting together a panel like this with you and so-and-so and so-and-so. Would you be up for doing that? And they go, yeah. Okay, great, man, thanks. And then I put that in my notes, and then I get back to them when the other people firm up and when I know which day it's going to be, what time it's going to be, specifically what the topic is going to be, rather than, some sort of amorphous description that I might give them in June. Once I get to July or August, I've got a very clear picture of what the panel's going to be. And then I don't just throw panels up any day of the week during the course of the weekend. I actually organize them so that there's a flow throughout the weekend. So a lot of planning goes into it. If the Mayor Garcetti, if you're watching, listen to me, buddy. I need to know by June or July if it's going to happen or not. I will keep you posted. We're hoping that it happens, although a little part of me would like to take a year off. I'd say that now, but I would miss it. Got 2 more minutes left. Robert Velcourse, more Nashville publishers, please. We have some years yes, some years no. It depends. The problem has been that there's some other big event in country music that happens 2 days after the road rally every year. And I know plenty of people that have come out before and would come out again, but when I call them and they look at, I forget what it is, CMAs, I think. Ralph Murphy, generally would fly home from the rally on Saturday at noon so he could go home, have 1 day off, and then start his CMA week. We can have a bouncer with a COVID tester to see who can enter the road rally. Oh, yeah, that's a lawsuit I want to avoid. I'm sorry, sir. You just flew here from Great Britain, but you've got a 99.5 fever. Therefore, we can't let you in. Yeah, don't want to do that. Rick Allen says, my wife thinks I'm an idiot. Help me prove her wrong. Rick, I don't know you. Is she wrong? I don't know. Why does she think you're an idiot is the question. Plankton, phosphorescence. Okay, I've got a short story about that, and then we're calling it a day. And remember, don't forget, first of all, smash that like button. Damn it, I'm not seeing enough of those things, and it's pissing me off. Subscribe if you don't already. Tell your friends about this wonderful show. And also remember, send your music that you would like us to consider. I'm actually going to have Bria and Ariana pick the music tomorrow so you can blame them and not me if your song doesn't get played. Take that, ladies. We're just listening. We're just going to have fun listening. And if you want to enjoy a frothy libation while we listen, feel free. Anyway, getting back to phosphorescing plankton. Many years ago, as you guys know, I'm an avid saltwater fisherman. I was fishing on the west coast of Florida. I was standing on a rock jetty. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. It was a moonless night. The air was still. The humidity was high. The mosquitoes were crazy. And the water was flat like glass. And I was fishing with a live finger mullet as my bait. Dude was about that big, like a little 6-inch mullet. And basically you kind of heave them out there and then let them swim away from you. Sometimes we would tie like a 6-inch balloon like 20 feet behind them on the line just so we could see where they were going. This was a moonless night, didn't matter. All of a sudden, I got a bite. All of a sudden, I was really out of focus. Works like a charm. Anyway, I got a bite. The rod tip bent over, and I remember the guy next to me was like, holy crap, I think he got a shark. I mean, that rod tip was bent over, forming the letter U. And it was not a very big, boat rod. This was like a rod that you would catch a 3-pound fish on. Turns out it was a very large ray. It was about 4 to 5 feet across. It was about 10 feet across. It was the biggest ray in the world. Fishing story. No, it was over 4 feet across for real. It was that time of year when the water in the bay or in the Gulf on the west coast of Florida has that phosphorescent plankton in it. It was the most beautiful thing. The wings of that ray, I mean, this thing was like, I don't know, hundreds of feet away from me, but it was leaving these beautiful phosphorescent trails in the water as it went back and forth and back and forth. I fought that thing all the way up to the jetty and then we let it go. But man, oh man, that was exciting and it was gorgeous. Yes, rays are good eating. Do you know that most of the time when you order, much of the time, if you order, what do they call those things? Not mussels, the round things that are about this big in a restaurant. Usually they're little dudes and you can get bigger ones. What do they call those? Somebody's got to be a fish eater out there. Not clams. Scallops. Okay, when you order scallops in a restaurant, if the scallops you get are like this big, there's a really good chance you're not actually getting scallops. What you're getting is the wings of a manta ray or a bat ray or some form of ray. The reason I know that is the night that I caught that ray, there were other guys. Apparently there were millions of rays moving down the coast of that area I was in that night. Other guys were catching rays. They were bringing them onto the jetty, and they brought cookie cutters that they had sharpened like razor blades around them. And they would, sadly, I don't like killing fish if I'm not going to eat them that night, and I don't even like killing them when I'm going to eat them. But I've been known to bring home one fish. I generally release everything I catch. But they were stamping the cookie cutters into the wings of the rays, and I said, what are you doing? And they said, ever eat scallops? And I said, yeah. And they said, this is where they come from. That shouldn't be where they come from. Anyway, thank you all for showing up. I hope you learned some valuable information today. Cass, I hope you enjoyed the goat shirt. I thought it was a good idea, not a bad one. See you tomorrow. Can't wait to listen to your music. We will be back for another exciting episode of Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour in 23 hours. Bye, you guys.